Hello and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback on this Thursday, our final live show of the week. We'll be teasing later on what we're going to talk about on our Sundays with Subscribers episode, which is exclusive to subscribers. That's why we call it Sundays with Subscribers. If you'd like to sign up, you can join us. Go to undividedpod.com. That's undividedpod.com, and you can find out how to join our mission and our movement to give common sense a comeback for as little as $5 a month. That's it, just $5 to make the world a better place. Is that saying too much? Is that too much of a pitch? We're doing the Lord's work over here on Undivided. Let me tell you what. Yesterday was a little bit of a feisty episode. I guess we'll continue that a little bit today because I do want to follow up on the story that occupied nearly our entire episode yesterday, which was the fact that in the middle of a drug crisis, Seattle City Council decided, oh no, we don't need a law on the books to make it a crime to possess or use illegal substances in public. It's disastrous. I just cannot wrap my mind around it. And it's doubly bad considering the deciding vote was the councilman for downtown Seattle, where these issues are the worst and where these issues have the biggest impact on us economically, and not just Seattle, on the entire state. Seattle is supposed to be the economic engine for the state. And it's so funny to watch the real tragic efforts that some Twitter users will go through to try to dismiss what we're saying, dismiss the arguments that we're making. The number one argument I see from Twitterati in Seattle is, you don't even live in Seattle, Brandi. Why do you care? You shouldn't even be covering this. Yeah, so we should tell every journalist in America that if they don't live specifically in the area they're covering, they can't cover it. That makes a lot of sense. That makes no sense at all. And what happens in Seattle doesn't happen on an island. That's why we talk about it. The drug policies, the public safety policies, the uber progressive bordering on socialist policies make their way out of Seattle, the ripple effects across Western Washington. They find their way to the State House in Olympia, and then they plant seeds in the little minds of some of the state lawmakers, and then it impacts everybody across the state. So it's a big deal. So there was this vote again, 5-4 vote. Andrew Lewis, the councilman for downtown, who is running for re-election this year, he makes the decision at the last possible moment, because we all thought going into the day that he was going to vote in favor of making drug possession a crime that the city attorney's office could prosecute. Nope, he changed his mind at the last moment. Here is just the latest example of Andrew Lewis's flip-flopping.
I came out here on the dais today fully prepared to vote for this measure, because I do think it is generally proper that we reconcile our SMC to the state law. But with the ending of community court without any additional process, I just can't do it today. I just can't.
As I said, he can. He just decided not to because Shama Sawant supporters showed up and screamed at him. The follow-up today is, I will say there are some members of the business community who are already trying to distance themselves from Andrew Lewis. And I had been really disappointed even before this vote and before this moment, because I'd heard behind the scenes that even though Olga Sagan with Piroshki jumped into the race for this particular seat, a business owner who's been outspoken for years about the challenges downtown, the business community was still going to rally behind Andrew Lewis, which I thought, this is the guy who campaigned in 2019 promising he would hire more officers and then pledged to defund SPD 6 months later, again, because people were yelling at him loud. Well, I'm not so sure after that vote that the business community is going to rally behind Andrew Lewis. There was this hilarious story our friend Chris Daniels, who's with Como News, did yesterday, talking about this vote. But in it, he spoke to the head of the Downtown Seattle Association, John Scholes, about his support or non-support of Andrew Lewis.
They've got no plan.
Downtown Seattle Association President John Scholes. He's claimed he's been endorsed by you in the DSA. Does that endorsement still stand?
I said he was a thoughtful leader, a consistent leader. He's been responsive. He wasn't yesterday.
So that sounds like a no.
I didn't endorse him. Politicians will take some liberties with things that we say.
He's like, I don't even want to be associated. But it's funny because on Andrew Lewis's campaign website, John Scholes, who you just heard from there, was listed second. So if you look at if you're watching on the stream, the top picture is what it reads right now in terms of his endorsements. And you don't see John Scholes up near the top, But yesterday, John Scholes was listed as number 2 in community leaders who endorse him. And John Scholes is saying, I didn't endorse his campaign. And now he's saying, for sure, like, let me distance myself from him as much as possible. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, the goal is for Andrew Lewis to be persona non grata with the business community because he doesn't deserve to keep his seat anymore. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this coming up in Sanity Check at the end of the show, because there is really some efforts, some deeply disingenuous efforts from other council members to do damage control on this by gaslighting the public, by lying to the public about what they did and about the implications of what they did. I'll also note, speaking of the race for Andrew Lewis's seat, I have been clear that I like Olga Sagan, of Proshki. We've had her on the show many times. I was informed a couple weeks ago, though, there's also a Seattle police officer who is in the race running for that seat. His name is Aaron Marshall, and he is going to join us coming up in a little bit on the show. And he has a really fascinating perspective because he's not only a longtime resident of downtown, but he patrols downtown. He has a daily interactions with, the drug users and the drug pushers and the criminals downtown. And so it's certainly a valuable perspective to bring into the conversation. And so in the interest of fairness, we want to have Aaron on to talk about it. So he's going to be joining us coming up in a little bit. But why it is also particularly embarrassing to have this happen in Seattle yesterday is, and Nicole found this story and I thought, oh God, this is really when you've fallen far, when Portland's doing more to try to deal with its street disorder issues than Seattle is. Oh, that's embarrassing. So there's this article in the Associated Press published in the Seattle Times, Portland bans daytime camping, imposes other restrictions. The article reads, Portland City Council voted Wednesday to pass an ordinance prohibiting camping during daytime hours in most public places as it, like other places in the U.S., struggles to address a long-time homelessness crisis. The vote was 3-1. It changes city code to say people may camp in non-restricted areas from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., but after that, they must dismantle the site until the permitted overnight hours begin. And they'd also critically, and again, wow, does Portland have more common sense than Seattle does? The ordinance also bans camping entirely near schools, parks, and busy streets, among other locations. You don't say. That it would be just common sense, reasonable stuff to not allow homeless camps to form near schools. I mean, we have had some, what am I forgetting, Nicole? There was a story, we didn't put it on the show yesterday, but about like a kid stabbed near a homeless encampment.
Oh, yeah, in Renton, actually. There was a girl stabbed in Renton by a homeless person, is what I'm told.
Yeah, we don't know like how they might have known or not known, but it's like, I'm not saying all homeless people are dangerous. I'm not saying all homeless people are criminals. But I go back to what the stats tell us, for instance, when it comes to shootings in the city of Seattle. More than gang ties, more than domestic violence, the biggest tie when it comes to shootings, the biggest link is homelessness. And it could be that it's somebody who is the victim that is homeless or the perpetrator that's homeless or it occurs near a homeless camp. But it's a no-brainer to say, yeah, probably not the most stable thing to put next to a park where children play. So good for Portland. It makes Seattle look bad. It's incredibly embarrassing to have us say, nah, we don't want to criminalize substance abuse. We don't want to give the Republican city attorney, God forbid, the ability to prosecute these people. And then Portland's like, oh, well, we're going to make sure that homeless people aren't camping next to playgrounds. It's embarrassing when you're when you're like behind Portland. Okay, we'll move on to that from that topic for a moment. But like I said, we're going to have Aaron Marshall on coming up. And then later on in the show, I'm going to talk about how Lisa Herbold, the head of the Public Safety Committee for the Seattle City Council, is totally lying to people about what the implications of this is going to be. And she's doing it, by the way, using city resources on a city website. Unreal. I just got sent this right before we started today from a subscriber, Beth. And I was like, we gotta put that into the show. Okay, let's quick move down to California. Speaking of places that are really at the brink, I actually might agree with something Governor Gavin Newsom is doing. Oh, shock. Hey, this is called undivided for a reason, right? Don't hate it. Now, I don't necessarily agree with his logic behind it. I don't necessarily know whether it will accomplish anything that he's saying it will accomplish, but Governor Gavin Newsom is proposing a 28th Amendment to the fine Constitution of ours, and it has to do with gun control. Here's a little campaign-type video he put out.
Every time, it's the same. They tell us we can't stop these massacres. They tell us we have to stand by and watch tragedy after tragedy unfold in our communities. They say we can't stop domestic terrorism without violating the Second Amendment, and that thoughts and prayers are the best we can do. I'm here to say that's a lie. In this country, we do have the power to change things, to reclaim our freedom from fear. Our ability to make a more perfect union is literally written into the Constitution. So today, I'm proposing the 28th Amendment to the United States Constitution to do just that. The 28th Amendment permanently enshrines 4 additions to the laws of our land. It raises the minimum age to purchase a firearm from 18 to 21. Because if you can't buy a beer, you shouldn't be able to buy a gun. It mandates universal background checks to prevent truly dangerous people from purchasing a gun that can be used in a crime. It institutes reasonable waiting periods for all gun purchases, and it bans civilians from buying assault rifles, those weapons of war our founding fathers never foresaw. This will guarantee states as well the ability to enact common sense gun safety laws.
So, okay. First of all, Gavin Newsom, just run for president. We know you want to. We know you're gearing up for it. We know you're just waiting for old Joe Biden to say he can't actually follow through with his second term, and you're just going to be there waiting. It's so obvious at this point. But I do not hate this route. I've said this before. Now, I'm not a gun person, but I am a Constitution lover. And I don't like the fact when you have state governments, for instance, slowly trying to chip away at one of our constitutional rights in the Second Amendment. Just like I would have a serious problem if they tried to chip away at our rights in the First Amendment or the Fifth Amendment or the Eighth Amendment. And you have amendments to the Constitution that were written, the quartering of troops. I mean, that was written at a much different time in America, but it's not as if we'd do away with it now because it was written so long ago that aspects of it aren't relevant anymore. It's not like we do away with that and say, okay, let's just hope the government doesn't get any ideas about, forcing us to house troops. The amendments that have to do with whether women and people of color have a right to vote. I think that's those rights are probably pretty safe in America, but it's not like you do away with those amendments. And so what I've said about people who don't agree with the Second Amendment and who want to try to, fudge it, fiddle with it, I've said, first of all, repeal it if you don't like it. There's a process in place that is in line with the Constitution to either add amendments, to get rid of amendments. And as long as it's done in a constitutional manner, and if at the end of the day, it's the will of the people, who am I to say that's not the right thing to do? It is a very difficult task to get an amendment ratified, just like it would be to remove an amendment from the Constitution. It should be difficult. We shouldn't want the Constitution, this critically important document that guides our rights as Americans, we shouldn't want it to be easily altered based on what political party is in charge, based on, constantly changing public opinion. We should want the process to be very, very difficult so that efforts like this don't happen all the time, so the Constitution isn't some constantly changing document. So look, I would rather have an effort to change the Constitution than dozens of efforts a year to try to erode an amendment. Because once the government fiddles with one amendment, what's stopping them from fiddling with another and stripping out our rights in the other? And as someone who has made a living off the First Amendment, am I currently exercising my rights in the Second Amendment? No. But if I support the erosion of those rights, who am I to defend my rights under the First Amendment to do this podcast, to give my opinion on politicians? So I am not, and Nicole, I feel like you have an opinion on this that you'd like to share. But I am not, and your eye's looking much better, by the way. She's like, I'll just
better. I'll just go to the side here.
Oh my God, you're so funny.
But it's just gross. I don't want to make anybody look at it.
Yeah.
But no, I agree with you that this is the route to go. Mm-hmm. I don't agree with the actual, him using shootings as an example of why this should happen and comparing it to, 18-year-olds buying guns and long waiting. None of those things are going to stop the gun violence that he's talking about. If somebody wants their hands on the gun, they'll get a gun.
Yeah.
But so I think playing into the fear mongering, playing into those issues that aren't necessarily what this will solve and things it's like this assault weapons ban in this state, as if that's going to solve it. Of the murders and
shootings are way
that
down.
Happened around here, right? But whatever, this is the route to go.
Yeah, I agree. And look, it's probably going to fail miserably. And Is that going to stop states like California from them being like, oh, this legitimate effort to change the Constitution failed, so let's not do any of the other things? No, they're going to keep trying to do it no matter what. But hey, have at it, Gavin Newsom. It's something to keep you busy until you can run for president. There it is. Okay, coming up next, we'll have our interview with a Seattle police officer who is running to represent downtown Seattle and replace the cowardly Andrew Lewis. But first, I've been talking about my friend Wes Jones, a longtime real estate in our area with sellwithwes.com. He and his team have a proven, innovative marketing strategy to make sure that the most possible eyeballs get on the listing for your home and that you get top dollar with the fewest contingencies. I mean, that's what everybody wants ultimately when they sell their home. And he did say, despite the ups and downs in the market, he really sees a window of opportunity right now for home sellers.
There's some pent-up buyer demand because buyers really went on strike starting last August and nothing happened. I should say very little happened the rest of the year. And it feels like we're getting back to your traditional seasonal real estate periods where a lot of home sales happen in the spring. So pent-up buyer demand, not a whole lot of options for buyers to purchase home, means that it's a great time to sell a home if you have to do something.
Yeah, so check out our friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com. He's even got his cell phone there if you want to reach out to him. I told him, brave man, putting your cell phone down, but he loves what he does, and he can give you some good advice if you're looking to sell your home right now. And there's also a tool at sellwithwes.com where you can look at your home value. It might be more than you think. So sellwithwes.com, a better way to sell your home. Okay, I mentioned, and I've been talking about my friend Olga Sagan, and I call her a friend. She's been on the show so many times. You know, she runs Proshki in Seattle, which is a very popular Seattle bakery, and she's been vocal. Even when it's hard for business owners to speak out about the just disaster downtown, she has spoken out about it. And so I was happy when she announced she was going to run for Seattle City Council to try to take Andrew Lewis's job, which now is probably a little bit easier than it was a few days ago. But I was also alerted a couple weeks ago that there's a Seattle police officer who's also running for that seat. His name is Aaron Marshall, and he I think it was good timing, given the vote yesterday, to have him on the show to talk about not only the vote that happened yesterday and from his perspective as a police officer, the public safety ramifications of that, but also what he would bring to the job as a member of the Seattle City Council. Aaron Marshall, welcome to Undivided.
Thank you for having me, Brandi.
So you have just an interesting life trajectory. You were like a high-end bartender before you became a cop?
Teeny Biggs, first in Denny.
I know Teeny Biggs.
Yeah, and then right after Teeny Biggs, Peso's Taco Lounge. So
you probably served me drinks before. I spent many an inebriated evening at Peso's.
Brandi, I'm not going to tell any stories on your podcast.
Oh, okay, good. Peso's got wild sometimes, man. That was a totally different story. But why'd you decide to become a cop?
Well, I joke that between the Marine Corps when I was 19 years old and being a bartender, it basically set me up for being a police officer. Those two things were the best education that a police officer could probably get. I don't know how you bottle that up and make it accessible for everybody, but it really worked for me. It's a matter of just, being able to read people and speak with people, but also, setting some limits for people as well.
Just practically speaking, are there any restrictions because of your job for running for city council? Because there's a lot of overlap there.
Yeah, it's a unique experience running for city council as a Seattle police officer. I'm certainly limited to some of the things that I can speak about and some of the things I cannot speak about at this point. I've talked to the command staff, and we're at the understanding that right now in the primaries, I'm going to keep it just about being a citizen of Seattle. I've lived here over 20 years. I know this district probably better than anybody that I've ever met in this district, just because I've lived here so long and I'm such a social person. I go out so often and meet businesses and, the people of my community. I will keep the law enforcement side a little bit more conservative now. And then if I make it through the primary, which I plan on doing, I do have some strong opinions about public safety and our police department. It's a wonderful place. I have had almost nothing but great things to say about the Seattle Police Department. But working there, like any institution, you have some criticism. Do you have some things that I think we could do better, that I would like to implement? And, it would be really great to have somebody on the city council who understands public safety, who understands the police department, the fire department, how things actually work versus these platitudes of other candidates and how they think things work. So Yeah, for now, as long as I'm not talking about tactics or certain cases, I'm free to talk about most anything in the police department.
I guess I was more so curious, can you keep your job as a cop with SPD if you get elected?
No, it's a full-time gig. City council is. So what will happen is if I make it through the primaries, depending on who my opponent is, I'll probably take a leave of absence, take August, September, October off to concentrate full-time on the campaign. Right now, I'm working full-time as a police officer. It is not uncommon for us right now to have 10, 20, 30 hours of overtime in a week. I've scaled back just a little bit because obviously I have a lot going on right now running for District 7. But with that being said, I'm working full-time doing the police work on Wednesday through Saturday, and then I'm doing campaigning Sunday, Monday, Tuesdays. I'm off to work this afternoon at 3 o'clock. Going forward, depending on who makes it through the primary, if it's Olga and I'll probably still continue being a police officer. I think Olga's campaign and I can come down to a real adult conversation and have the important things said that need to be said without both of us dedicating our entire lives, businesses, and the taxpayers' donations to a campaign. Now, if it's Andrew Lewis and I'm going to take that very seriously because he has $93,000 that has been donated to him already. So that's a serious proposition. And regardless of his policies, that's a fair amount of money to contend with.
Yeah. Thank you. I was just kind of curious about how all of that works with someone who is actively a city employee. It's interesting. I don't meet a lot of Seattle police officers who still choose to live in the city. Are you patrolling downtown, or what is your beat? What is your assignment?
Oh, I'm a unicorn. That's for sure. When I first got hired, I lived in downtown. I lived in Queen Anne, and everybody said, listen, kid, get out of here. Just move anywhere else. Don't live in downtown. And so I actually worked the beat that I lived in, which is called Queen 3, Lower Queen Anne. I moved on from there to downtown Seattle, and I spent 3 years in patrol all through downtown Seattle. I moved into downtown Seattle, not to give out too many secrets, but I live within walking distance of the West Precinct. In about my third year on, I became a member of the West Precinct's anti-crime team, which is a street level narcotics and warrant team. We deal with everything from prostitution to violent crimes, but it's all at the street level. The reason I have a beard is because I like to fit into my community around here. So some people know I'm a police officer, but a lot of people don't. So we've been reimagined by the Seattle Police Department as the Community Response Group now. We're a larger entity of about 20 officers, 5 sergeants, and a lieutenant. And now we are citywide, but we deal with the most prolific issues of downtown Seattle, narcotics being number one, prostitution, warrant service, violent crimes. We just served a internet crimes against children warrant yesterday morning. So we're a very diverse, almost the Swiss Army knife of Seattle.
Yeah, good way to put it. And yes, a beard will help you fit in anywhere in Seattle. This race has taken on a new meaning, I think, after the vote this week with the decision, especially by Andrew Lewis, which I guess I could believe it, but with his decision not to have a law for the city attorney to be able to enforce. From your just experience down there, react to that decision by Andrew Lewis and the other council members who voted with him.
It's tragic. I don't know a single first responder that doesn't have compassion for this subject. It's insulting to think that we just want this law so we can arrest users and people that are possessing. We realize that it is a disease, that it is more common to having a burn patient than somebody who maybe gets cancer. A burn patient needs a certain amount of treatment. They need things to happen, or that burn will become more infected and they could die from that. We basically have legalized people and allowed them to die on our streets without any assistance. Our OD calls now, if you listen to any police scanner, are on the hour, multiple times per hour. It is an overwhelming prospect. And to take this tool away from police officers is a real miscarriage of justice. I think that move shows how much of a windsock Andrew Lewis is. Whatever prevailing winds go, if few people show up to city council, he will absolutely change course on a lickety split and become whatever they need in front of them. And I've seen it over 4 years, and it's one of the reasons I'm running. I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired of watching this city council make the decisions they've made.
Yeah. Well, how do you take, I think there's a lot of momentum after that vote. I mean, I see the business community all of a sudden, behind the scenes, I hear these rumors that they were going to coalesce around him because, they thought he'd learned his lesson. And then I saw like hands off Andrew Lewis, like he's persona non grata after that vote. So how do you, as a relative unknown, try to, I hate to use the word capitalize, but it is capitalize off of
Sure.
his error?
Well, I've really reached out in the last 24 hours to a lot of different entities that were supporting him before. I think that people are looking to take your moniker and mine as well. My campaign slogan is an independent voice for common sense change, and I think people are really thirsting for that right now. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I have a long voting record that goes back to being 18 years old, but I've really gone out and talked to folks and told them, how the sausage is made by being a police officer. I'll tell them what works and what doesn't work. I can usually tell within a month of a program starting whether or not it's going to be effective or not, because I actually see the metrics firsthand. I'm out on the street every single day that I'm working, and even days that I'm not working. I love going out for dinners. I pretty much go out for dinner almost every single night that I'm not working. So I see the streets firsthand, and I know my district. And I think that I'm capitalizing by the fact that I can go out and touch base with all of these business owners, all of the people in Seattle that are really, they want something done. The fact of doing nothing is not an option anymore. And I think that's what the city council has decided, this lame duck city council that we have right now, that basically is thumbing, their disgust at the citizens of Seattle by voting this way. So all of these candidates, they don't have to live here. They're going to go off to their houses in different areas, but they're going to just leave downtown to deteriorate the way it has.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's, this, that I, have a history with Olga Sagan. We've had her on the show many times. I contributed to her campaign. I didn't know you were running, by the way. I didn't know there was an SPD officer running, and the Seattle Police Officer Guild president let me know about it at an event last week. And honestly, if it's not Andrew Lewis, I'm happy. And so, I absolutely wish you all the best on the campaign trail as you try to, get some momentum behind your campaign. I want to end with this because you said something in your announcement that really struck me, because it's a simple thing, but talking about, and I'm sure it goes back to some of your experience as a bartender, improving the nightlife. When I first moved to Seattle 13 years ago, I went downtown at night all the time. Me and my friends, we went to Pike, Post Alley and Pike Place Market. We went out at night and we felt safe doing it. I would not feel safe doing that with my girlfriends now. For someone who's lived down there for so long, if we fast forward 5 years, what's your vision for what Seattle could and should be 5 years from now?
Brandi, I'm so glad you asked that, because being a police officer, I get probably 80%, 90% of my questions are public safety based, which I completely understand. It's the first and most important thing we need to deal with. However, I was a bartender longer than I have been a cop. And I really love nightlife in downtown Seattle. And I don't like the idea of going back to something. Yes, the 90s and early 2000s were a lot of fun. I totally agree, and I was part of that. But we have a real opportunity here as a city, as a district of District 7, to really decide what we want downtown Seattle to look like. It is an opportunity. It's a tragic opportunity, but it's still an opportunity nonetheless of envisioning something that we can all really enjoy. So, for example, Amazon is the 900-pound gorilla that lives here now. It is what it is. I have strong opinions about Amazon, but I want to embrace the fact that we have a lot of tech workers in downtown Seattle that don't seem to be going out at night. Now, part of that, I think, is due to public safety. They just don't feel safe going out at night, and I completely get that. But what is it that we can provide them? What is it that we can offer them that really that makes them excited about going out, whether it be restaurants, art, culture, music? I want that for downtown Seattle. I think it will be a tremendous failure of downtown Seattle if I see an Applebee's open up on 3rd Avenue. I want it to be local. I want that young chef right now who's working their tail off in a restaurant to want to open that restaurant on the 1500 block of 3rd Avenue. I know that sounds absurd right now, seeing the state of 3rd Avenue, but that's what I envision, is this really eclectic, great mix of different socioeconomic groups that can go into downtown Seattle and have a great time. I think, one of the things that we don't have on the West Coast that they do have on the East Coast is this real sense of ownership of your town. I've never been to Boston, but I can guarantee you talk to somebody from Boston, they'll tell you they're from Boston and everything that's great about Boston. And I want that to be Seattle. I want people to be very proud of their city again. And I want to bring it back to a state that feels safe, and open to the idea of new businesses being created in downtown Seattle. That's my vision, and I'm going to do everything I can to make that happen.
Well, I think that's great. I'll disagree with you on one thing. Given the number of vacant storefronts on 3rd Avenue, I'd welcome an Applebee's. Hey, they got a good cheap happy hour. I'd rather take an Applebee's than a vacant storefront.
Brandi, that's almost 50-50 on that. I really don't
Hey, I'm
not
from
a
the
big
Midwest.
corporate
Don't hate on
restaurant guy.
Applebee's.
Yeah.
Don't hate on Applebee's. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah.
okay, we'll disagree on that. Aaron Marshall, good luck to you. Look, if you can take out Andrew Lewis, by all means, Godspeed. And thank you for your service to the city. Not only in my early days, you probably poured me a few drinks, but also, obviously, in your service as a police officer. We do appreciate it. We know how difficult that job is right now.
Brandi, thank you for having me.
So that is Aaron Marshall, a Seattle police officer, resident of downtown, candidate for the 7th District seat for the Seattle City Council, which is the seat currently held by Andrew Lewis downtown, and apparently a hater of Applebee's. Man, just bougie. That's okay. Hey, look, is Applebee's my first choice? No. But I'd rather have Applebee's than the vacant storefronts, as I told him. But look, I think there are some good options for candidates to replace Andrew Lewis. As I said on the show yesterday, the business community shouldn't give him another dime. Not a dime, not a freaking dime after defunding, after this. And you have other options as a business community for people who actually want it to be safe and welcoming and fun downtown again. It's just a no-brainer. Okay, I've been talking about First Mark Insurance, firstmarkinsurance.com. Mike and I took the First Mark Challenge after hearing about it on the radio for years. It was awesome. It didn't cost us a dime. And First Mark took a look at all of our current insurance, talked to us about our insurance needs, especially as we race toward getting married. And then they came back with a proposal that was dramatically more insurance for just about the same price. It was a no-brainer. I had Dave Taylor, the CEO of First Mark, in, and we talked about some of the issues that Mike and I had with our insurance before we did the First Mark Challenge. Would you say our primary issue is we were undercovered?
I would. Yeah.
And what's the risk for someone of being undercovered?
Yeah, so I think it's real common for us to see on a liability level that folks don't have enough coverage. Because in the state of Washington, there's the state minimum limits of coverage that the state says, hey, if you have these limits, you're legal. And I think that can be confused with legal equals adequately covered, and that's not the case. So the risk is if you get in an auto accident and you don't have enough coverage, and let me clarify, you get in an auto accident that's your fault, and you don't have enough coverage, then they can come after you personally for any additional amounts over and above your coverage limit. And that means things like your retirement plan, or come after your equity in your home, or garnish your wages. So it's a big thing. And like with you and Mike, I just think most people haven't had someone take the time to explain it to them in terms they can understand, and show them the how inexpensive it is to actually get the correct coverage.
Yeah, and I think that was the big thing. When you talk about like having an insurance broker, you think, oh, I got to make a lot of money to that. No, we didn't pay them anything. And they did all this work for us. And then came back and we got way better insurance for the same price. So it's like, oh my gosh, why did we not do this sooner? So check out firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. Dave Taylor and his team are so fantastic. And there's a little button on the website where you can take the First Mark Challenge. So consider it. Okay, let's get to our segment, Unbelievable. All right, this is freaking disappointing. I hate to be so Seattle focused the last few days, but again, it's like, man, if Seattle doesn't do well, the state is screwed. And I was giving credit yesterday to some of the council members who have common sense and who voted in favor of passing an ordinance to make drug possession and open-air drug use a crime, even though they were overruled by the crazy fringe. Alex Peterson is one of those who I've given a lot of credit for being reasonable, for being moderate, and he's been very business friendly as well. And this is his last little hoorah on the council. He'll be done at the end of the year. He's not running for re-election. And I'll say, man, he's really trying to disappoint me before he leaves office, because Alex Peterson is proposing a capital gains tax in Seattle. Why would you do that? Alex, why would you do that? Why? So he says, and look, I do not disagree that our tax system is regressive. I just happen to think the answer to that is to get rid of some taxes to help people out a little bit and to be better stewards of tax dollars in general. But he's saying, and look, I'll give him a little bit of credit, because as he proposes a tax on capital gains, he's also wanting to eliminate a tax on drinking water that people pay. And so he says that the net money that the government is taking would be the same. You'd pass a capital gains tax, and then you'd get rid of this drinking water tax. And so at least he wants to get rid of a tax while he simultaneously proposes one. And look, do I think a 15.54% tax on water bills is ridiculous? Yeah. I didn't even know there was a 15.54% tax on water bills in Seattle. I wonder if it was that way when I lived there, because I didn't notice it. Ridiculous. But at a time when Seattle is having such a challenging time attracting businesses, keeping businesses here, keeping investments here, why would you go through and try to put a tax on capital gains? Why now? It's unbelievable to me, and it's very tone deaf. We need all the investment we can get in the city. We need all the businesses that we can get in the city to bring the city back to life and to make sure there's economic prosperity for everyone, that there's good paying jobs, that tourism is flourishing, that once the MLB All-Star game, if it goes well, that people want to come back for tourism later on or sporting events. And so it just bums me out, and this is kind of terrifying, to be honest, when you have 5 incumbents not running for their seats again, and they're going to be done at the end of the year. They're going to go through a budget cycle. And I'm almost freaked out to think what these people are going to try to push through, and then they get to leave office and just be like, oh, not my problem anymore. And then they can have this thing on their resume that I did this in Seattle. So again, I'm glad that he actually understands, trying to make it tax neutral. I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. But when you talk about a tax on capital gains at a time when that is going to scare people away from the city who we need here to bring the city back to life, Alex Peterson, don't do it. Absolutely unbelievable. I just had to bring that up today because, man, I gave him compliments on compliments on compliments yesterday, and then today he's just breaking my heart. Okay, let's step outside of Washington State for a moment. Miranda wasn't here last week, which was my fault because I broke down on the side of the road. I got my car back today, by the way. Nicole got my car back today.
And it's
worked. Functioning.
It turned on when you got there.
It's been like a month ordeal with my car. It turns out I needed a new catalytic converter because of some issue. Somebody didn't steal it, which was nice. It didn't get stolen. I almost would have rather it got stolen because then it's easy. It's like, oh, there's no catalytic converter. We know what's wrong. I have my car back, though. Very excited. And we also have Miranda back. So let's get to our segment, Florida Report.
It's not even controversial anymore.
People know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected.
Miranda, hello.
Hello.
So there's a lot of Ron DeSantis news, obviously. He just made a trip as his first trip to the southern border as a candidate for the presidency. But related to that, there was this whole kerfuffle this week with Ron DeSantis acknowledging that, yes, the state of Florida did send some migrants to California essentially to make a political point. And Gavin Newsom is not happy.
No, he's not happy. He actually tweeted, not even in response, he just tweeted straight at to Ron DeSantis saying, "You small, pathetic man, this isn't Martha's Vineyard. Kidnapping charges, ? And I think that's him alluding to the fact that these immigrants did not go like on their own will, and they were like forced to get on the plane and forced to go to California. But then there's a bunch of sources that say that they absolutely knew where they were going and that it wasn't like forced. But I think that that's Newsom's way of, just trying to make an extra point in his argument. But yeah, he's mad. He doesn't think that it was done legally. DeSantis has said it before. He thinks that our borders should be closed. And if they're going to be open, then states with sanctuary jurisdictions should be the ones to bear the brunt of that open border crisis.
Yeah, he said this at the southern border when he was there. He said these sanctuary jurisdictions are part of the reasons we have this problem because they've endorsed and agitated for these types of open border policies. They've bragged that they are sanctuary jurisdictions. They attack the previous administration's efforts to try to have border security. And I think it's ridiculous to assert that the migrants didn't get on the plane willingly and they were forced on the plane. Now, I don't know if they knew where they were going, but does anybody really think that migrants who've crossed into the U.S. illegally that get put on a private charter plane to Sacramento, California, are going to be upset about it? I don't think so. I think that's just both of them are grandstanding, obviously, and neither are contributing to actually solving the issue by doing that and by calling it kidnapping. So it's just ridiculous. Let's see here. What else you got for us today, Miranda?
So on Tuesday, the governor suspended the mayor of North Miami Beach following his arrest for voter fraud charges.
This is so
And
fascinating to me.
this also goes kind of like in line with DeSantis' big push against voter fraud and making sure that people can have more faith in the voter system. But he's basically accused of voting in 3 different elections in North Miami Beach, and he does not live there.
And you were telling me that North Miami Beach charter requires that if you're going to serve in public office there, you live there. So, and he doesn't. And how far away does he live?
He lives in an area called Davie, which is on a good day, a 30-minute drive north. And it's not even in Miami-Dade County. It's in Broward County. So he doesn't even live in the county that the city that he's a mayor of and voted in is at. So he's in a little bit of trouble. He made a statement saying that he thinks that he'll be fully exonerated because he apparently had purchased that home for his family due to some marital issues. But they tracked his government cell phone and found him driving back and forth there pretty much every day. So he definitely does not live in the area he voted in. So they buckled down on him and removed him from his position. So I'm assuming the vice mayor will now take charge in North Miami Beach.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I like hearing about instances where someone who's accused of committing voter fraud is being held accountable because, we get into this whole back and forth about stolen elections or people who think the elections are perfect. There's always instances of voter fraud. And I think you have to make an example out of people who are caught red-handed doing it. And I think it's interesting. I actually don't know whether this is something that a governor of any state can do with an elected official accused of something. I've never heard of it happening, but the governor issued an executive order rather, saying Anthony D. Filippo II is prohibited from performing any official act, duty, or function of public office, from receiving any pay or allowance, and from being entitled to any of the emoluments or privileges of public office during the period of this suspension. So it sounds like, if he's exonerated, he can go back and do his job. But basically, yes, the governor's order is like, hey, you're not the mayor until this is sorted out.
Yeah, we had kind of talked about this probably a few months ago when DeSantis had taken that sheriff's duties away from him after he was saying something like he didn't want to enforce these rules that he was, the people in his state, in his county voted for him for the exact opposite reason. Now he has to enforce these, these state rules through DeSantis. But from what I remember with that is that our governor does have the power to remove an elected official, but that elected official can get his power back by going to the House and the Senate and asking for a vote, if that's what I remember correctly. Yeah. So yeah, he does have the power to do it, but he doesn't have the power. He's not the final say in the matter.
Yeah, I remember that case that we talked about, and I didn't necessarily like it. Because again, I think that was a prosecutor making a decision, hey, these aren't the kind of cases I'm going to charge. And so there has to be some, I think, separation. There's a reason why judicial is supposed to be kept separate from politics. And so I certainly wouldn't want to see a governor in a position to just I'm going to use this power to suspend people who aren't doing what I want them to do. But in this case, you've got a guy who is accused of something serious, and that's voter fraud. And so I think temporarily suspending his ability to be mayor while it's sorted out makes perfect sense. So, all right, Miranda, good stuff. Must be an exciting time in Florida right now.
It's always exciting in Florida. Come on.
That's true. That's true. Never a dull day in Florida. All right, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
It's not even controversial anymore.
People know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected.
Miranda's the more favorite sister.
Who's?
More favoriter? People like Miranda more. I just saw the live chat, we missed Miranda. Glad to have her back. Miranda's so pretty. Making me sick. You're off the show, Miranda. Can't have anyone more liked or prettier than me and Nicole, so you're done. Anyway, that has been Florida Report for today. No, I'm kidding. Always good to have Miranda back. She got a haircut, and I had to laugh at Matt Gilbert in the comments, because remember Miranda was on and she was talking about how she had these terrible bangs. I was like, wow, what happened? I was like, you better grow these out before my wedding. It's because her bunny rabbits chewed her hair off on one side, so she sort of cut it on the other, and they looked awful. And I said, oh, she got a haircut. And Matt said, the rabbits are getting better at cutting hair. Oh, good. Although, having your rabbits cut your hair is cheaper.
Yes.
So that's
There
an
we
option.
go.
Okay, before we get to the comments, I have been preaching about Eastside Weight Loss Clinic because I just feel so good, and I would love for you to feel as good as I feel. I am down more than 35 pounds on the program. I was just talking to Nicole. I was munching down my lunch, my little salad I made at home, and I was like, man, I'm loving eating this way. It's changed my whole outlook on eating, and it's just been so good for me. EastsideWeightLossClinic.com, EastsideWeightLossClinic.com. If you're not sure if a program is right for you, reach out to Dr. Ryan Coogan. Schedule just a free 15-minute consultation. He'll tell you about the program. There's no prepackaged meals. There's no counting calories. There's no weird hypnosis or surgeries. And so I really like the program for all of those reasons. So again, EastsideWeightLossClinic.com. That is EastsideWeightLossClinic.com. Join me and the other undivided subscribers who have started the program and are seeing fantastic results. Okay, let's get to comments from the live chat today. Janelle, we missed your super comment yesterday, so we will read it off the top today. See, a statement like that really makes me mad. My children are skin-colored white, but are members of the Puyallup tribe, meaning their ethnicity is Native Indian and some Dutch. Are they brown? And I think you were referring to Tammy Morales on the Seattle City Council saying the only reason we'd criminalize substance abuse is because we want to put black and brown people in jail, which is just stupid. Let's see. I'm going to Bellingham right after this. I was asking Nicole, because that's her hood, I was like, how long is it going to take me to get there? I'm an ambassador, as you guys know, for Future 42, and so I'm going to go speak to a group up there. Gabe asked, Brandi, when will you be in Bellingham, my neck of the woods, and I would love to come listen to you talk. I don't know if it's something that's open to the public or not. I wish I knew that. I'm not sure if it is. But I do plan to be in Bellingham. As you guys know, on the show the other day, I'm going to be doing some meet and greets across Western Washington. You know, the underlying reason is I really want to give everyone who wants it an opportunity to sign Referendum 101. But even if you don't want to sign it, I'd still love to meet you. And one of those locations might be in Bellingham. So Gabe will have to, if you can comment in the comments, Gabe, give me your email address, okay? And we'll let you know whether tonight's event is public, because I just am not sure, to be honest. But then also just keep an eye out for whether I'll be doing one of those meet and greets in Bellingham. Okay, on guns and Gavin Newsom's 28th Amendment proposal. Todd says you should be able to buy a gun, a beer, a joint at the age of 18. An adult is an adult. You can sign contracts and join the military at 18. And I've talked about the weird sort of age discrepancies before on the show, mostly related to like allowing kids who are 13 to make their own medical decisions, which is weird to me, considering you have to get parental consent to get a tattoo. So I tend to agree. You pick the age that someone is an adult, and you just stick to it. Whether it's 18 or 21, fine, but pick an age. Aaron says on Patreon, this 28th Amendment topic is fascinating. Newsom and their strategists aren't dumb enough to believe this would work, as his video suggests. Newsom's points are contradictory to the second in many regards. There is no way our court would allow this to coexist with the Second Amendment as it is. This is one of two things: an effort to quietly approach the dismantling of the Second Amendment, or it's the preemptive vehicle to drive an ethical and emotional justification for expanding the Supreme Court. Both of those things are entirely possible, I will say. Mandy said, are they going to take knives, bats, and cars next? A tool becomes a weapon when it's used incorrectly. And that's why I don't like the phrase assault weapon. Every weapon used to hurt someone intentionally and against the law is an assault weapon. And so it's just weird to me. Karen says we don't need a new amendment to the Constitution. Like abortion, it should be left up to the individual states to determine gun legislation. With that said, it doesn't matter because a shooter will always find a way to obtain firearms. Now, I disagree in one regard. The abortion thing, I'm fine with that being left to states because there is nothing in the Constitution that grants protections for abortion. There is a Second Amendment in the Constitution with gun rights, and so I don't like the piecemeal approach that states are taking. H says, is Gavin ready to give up his armed security detail? Does he want his children to do without any armed guards? Good question. It's like the progressive lawmakers in Congress who were like, defund the police in 2020, and they have private security everywhere they go. It's like, oh, so you just don't want poor people to be protected. Got it. Noted. Dan, if the baseline for adulthood is the age of 21, then everything should be raised for the same reasons, including voting. I agree. Again, pick it. 18 or 21. Which one is it? Matthew on Alex Peterson proposing a tax on capital gains. So Alex Peterson wants people with money and businesses to leave and thus decrease the tax base. Once again, someone with no private sector experience making policy affecting the private sector. I actually don't know about Alex Peterson's experience. Can you Google Alex Peterson quick? See if he has private sector experience, which would make me even more disappointed. I know he's very business friendly. It wouldn't surprise me if he had a business background. And again, like, I just think that when it comes to fixing our regressive tax structure, the answer certainly isn't what state lawmakers do, where they tax the rich and then don't alleviate taxes on the poor, or remove taxes for the poor. That makes zero sense. But I think that being better stewards of our tax money, we talked on the show yesterday about how, you have to ask for volunteers to clean up city parks, yet we give you hundreds of millions of dollars in tax money for that stated purpose. That's ridiculous. If we've got to go clean up our own parks anyway, then give us our tax money back. That'll help people who are impacted by a regressive tax structure to get some of their money back. This is funny. On Applebee's, we talked to Aaron Marshall earlier. He's a Seattle police officer, a candidate to represent downtown on the city council. Apparently he hates Applebee's, okay? Matt said, yeah, we fancy like Applebee's on a date night. Got that bourbon steak, street steak with the Oreo shake. Get some whipped cream on the top. 2 straws, 1 check, girl, I got you. I don't know if those are the exact lyrics. Pretty close. Sterling Marshall said, hard no on Applebee's. But am I wrong? If it were an Applebee's or a vacant storefront, would we not rather have an Applebee's? Did you find out if Alex Peterson has private sector experience?
It doesn't look like it. Doesn't list it.
Okay.
I was trying to find if it's in here somewhere, but I don't see
Maybe he
any.
doesn't. Maybe that explains why at this time, at this juncture in the city, he's proposing a tax on capital gains. Terrible idea, Alex. That is not what you want your legacy to be. You leave the council having supported this bill to recriminalize drugs and give police a tool and the prosecutors a tool, and just let that be. It's good. It's good. Don't do this. Okay, let's move on to our closing sanity check for today, shall we? Gaslighting gone wild. The more elected leaders have to gaslight you to convince you that they've done the right thing, the more you can be convinced that they've done the wrong thing. And what's happening in the Seattle City Council right now is a perfect example of this. Seattle City Councilwoman Lisa Herbold, who, oh my praise, I'm not even religious, but is this correct, Nicole? Thank you, Jesus. It's close. Okay.
It's close.
That was close. Thank you, Jesus. That Lisa Herbold's not running again, but man, I want her gone today from the council. It's kind of sad we have to wait the rest of the year because who knows what crazy stuff she'll cook up. Somehow this woman who hates cops, doesn't care whether we're safe, is managed to be the chair of the Public Safety Committee. She voted against this proposed ordinance to make sure that the city attorney's office could handle cases involving open-air substance abuse, possession, etc. So after the swift backlash from people with a brain yesterday, Councilwoman Lisa Herbold used city resources, a city website, to publish a blog called Setting the Record Straight on Seattle City Council's decision not to give city attorney unprecedented powers. And in it, she reiterated the gaslighting that Andrew Lewis had during the council meeting after his vote, saying, hey, this doesn't stop Seattle police from arresting people for possessing drugs or using drugs in public. The King County prosecutor's still a state law on this. The King County prosecutor's office can enforce and can prosecute the state law. And again, is she lying? No. But she is clearly and intentionally misrepresenting reality. Before the vote happened in the city council, the King County prosecutor, Lisa Mannion, wrote council members a letter. She told them, we don't have the resources to take on new gross misdemeanor cases in our office. We have to focus on violent felonies. We are not going to be prosecuting cases under the state law around drug possession, drug use. And look, you can have a problem with that, with the King County prosecutor not prioritizing those cases, not having the resources, but I don't know how you can disagree with the fact that, yeah, we should probably prioritize violent crimes if you really do have to pick and choose. But the thing is, the Seattle Council knew that. They were told that. The county prosecutor warned them. So by not passing a city ordinance, Lisa Herbold knew what the result would be. The result would be there being no entity that would prosecute those cases. So when you say, and when Lisa Herbold says, oh, I'm clearing up, setting the record straight, and then she says police officers can still arrest people for drug possession or public drug use. The decision to do so is at the discretion of the Seattle Police Department. They're going to arrest them, and then what? No one is going to prosecute them. What is the point when we're 600 officers down of having officers spend their time arresting those people when they're not going to be booked into jail and they're not going to be prosecuted? Shame on you, Lisa Herbold. This is not surprising. I expect this of you. This is who you are. But to use city resources, city time, a city website, to write, again, a blog that claims it's setting the record straight on the vote only to gaslight and mislead your constituents, that's Exhibit A as to why I could not be more grateful that you are leaving the Seattle City Council. In fact, I'm happier that you're leaving than I am that Kshama Sawant is leaving. I am more grateful that you are not going to be a council member anymore than I am that the socialist Kshama Sawant is not going to be a council member. You know why? Kshama Sawant is at least intellectually honest. I think she has crazy ideas, but I always know that I'm going to get crazy ideas from her. And she's always going to stand behind her crazy ideas. I don't know what to expect from you ever. And you lie and you mislead, and when you do something, you don't own it. When you do something, you don't own it. And that's why I'm glad that you're leaving the Seattle City Council. And that has been our sanity check for today.
But she's the grandma with the nose ring.
Oh, grandma
Cool.
with the nose ring.
Edgy.
Cool. Move to Portland, grandma with a nose ring, because that's where you're from anyway, and it shows, okay?
That's a Dory line.
That
by the
has
way.
been...
You know that? I have everybody sending me messages
Oh,
about
grandma
that.
with a nose ring? No, I didn't
Cool,
know that.
edgy.
She's a grandma with a nose ring. Super edgy. All right, that has been it for today's episode of Undivided and this week's offering from Undivided. Sunday on the show, we're going to be talking about kind of an off-the-wall issue, but it's... Nicole and I were sent an email that kind of reminded us of it this week, but we're going to talk about this issue of transgender inmates in our prison system and how truly nonsensical and out of control it has gotten when you talk about housing biological males with women in the same cell, when it comes to dictating what corrections officers, be they male or female, what inmates they have to search and are required to search as part of their job. This stuff is wild. So it's a fascinating topic, perfect for Sundays with subscribers. So if you'd like to join us for our Sunday show, make sure to become a subscriber at undividedpod.com. That's undividedpod.com. By doing so, not only do you get access to that bonus episode every single week, but you help contribute and support to this mission where we are doing our damn best to give common sense a comeback. So I'll see subscribers on Sunday. I will see the rest of you on the live show on Monday.